Hello everyone, this is Max and I'm coming to you from the Santa Monica Mountains in Southern California. Today I am going to go to several sites in these mountains where fire has affected the vegetation in the last decade. And I'm going to show you what happens to plant communities after fire, like what they look like recently after fire, and then what they can look like up to a few years after fire. So my main goal with this is to give an answer to the question of, do these communities, these plant communities, come back the exact same way after a fire? Well, to answer this question, let's get started. So the first site I'm taking a look at is in Topanga State Park, which is in the central Santa Monica Mountains. So right in front of me is what normal chaparral around this area looks like. This chaparral is old growth and has been here for a few decades. However, we recently had a fire that covered much of the park and destroyed a lot of vegetation. So if you turn around behind me, and we just go over here a little bit, this is what a lot of the park looks like now. This is a recently burned area that burned here, I believe in May of this year, which is 2021. And you can see that pretty much everything has just been cooked and cleared out of the area due to the fire. For comparison, back there is more old growth chaparral on that hill. And then right here in front of us, that is the fire damage. And I'm doing this footage in September of this year. It's only been a few months since the fire. So you can see still remnants of a lot of the ash around over there. And most of the vegetation has just completely been cooked. You can see that it's just a barren expanse for the most part. Also, I can tell that this fire that came through here was a fast moving fire. And you can tell that because if you look at this bush, these leaves are definitely burned. But the leaves are still there, which means that the fire moved so fast through this area that it didn't actually have the time to fully burn the leaves. It killed them, but it didn't fully burn them. And so, as I'll get to later in this video, that is actually a pretty significant deal, not just for leaving all of this dead vegetation around in the habitat, but also for determining how the community responds after a fire. Most of the plants here will not start regrowing until we get rain this coming winter. However, you do notice that some bushes, like the Laurel Sumac that is right in front of me, are already starting to grow. These plants and a few others that you can see growing in the distance are specialized for growing really quickly right after a fire. So they come back really quickly, and we haven't even had any rain. So these plants are sprouting without new precipitation. So some plants do come back really quickly. Pretty much all start growing once there is rain after a fire. But for most plants, it will take a few years for them to come back. Yeah, most shrubs that are really thick, it takes them a little while to grow. So it will take them a few years to come back, and probably at least a decade before this area is pretty similar to what it looks like before. But what if it doesn't come back that way? Well, to see what these plant communities look like a few years after a fire, let's head to another site. Hello again, everyone. So this is Zuma Canyon in the Santa Monica Mountains, and this area was burned in the Woolsey fire, which happened in 2018. So this fire was huge and actually set a record for the largest area burned at one time in the Santa Monica Mountains. So it was a devastating fire, and this was just one of the areas affected by it. So you'll definitely notice like some of the trees out there, the branches are still mostly bare and the leaves are coming back. But overall you can see that a lot of the vegetation has grown back, like all these bushes in the creek bed. Over here on this side hill, a lot of the vegetation has come back, and it's very far off, but also way in the distance over there, the chaparral in those trees is also growing back. So while many plant communities in this area have been recovering nicely, there are a few places where you can see that the plants are not coming back the exact same way that they came back before. So I'm actually going to go to two little specific examples here and show you that. So some areas out here did recover from the fire, like this creek bed area. Lots of good vegetation growth up here. But one area that didn't recover very well is that hillside over there. So if you look at the back mountains way over here, those areas were chaparral. So those areas are recovering reasonably well because chaparral is reasonably tolerant of fires and good at springing back. Now, all plant communities around here are good at springing back, such as like these riparian trees here. However, some communities are not as good at intense fires. So the community that was on this hill was coastal sage scrub, which is kind of similar to chaparral, but the plants are a lot softer and generally not as hardy as chaparral plants. So that area was covered in a bunch of small shrubs up there, and when the fire came through, it erased all of it. It basically was bare, and in its place, a lot of invasive reeds took place. So there are a few bushes up there that have regrown since the fire, but nowhere near as many. Right now it looks like a grassy hill with a few bushes. Before the fire it was pretty much just bushes. So you can see that was a pretty big change. And the reason why the shrubs haven't come back could be a number of reasons. It could be competition with the invasive weeds that have colonized that area. It could also be that the seeds of the native plants were actually cooked at such a high temperature that they weren't able to respawn. Either way, this hillside is not going to be the same again unless the Park Service decides to make it undergo restoration efforts. Another place where you can see that the vegetation is coming back differently after the fire is on this little trail area over here. So you can see that some of these bushes here were burnt all the way and they are regrowing. So those are going to be fine. However, this hillside here, especially along this trail, has a lot of these invasive weeds growing in. And don't get me wrong, these invasive weeds were around here before the fire. That's part of the reason that the seed bank was here, so that these could sprout and colonize like they are right now. However, they were not as common here as you see now. Like there were maybe just a few of them. Now there's these big dense clusters of all these reeds. Also, just to clarify, these brown things that I'm looking at aren't the actual living reeds. Those are just the dead bodies left over in the dry season. These reeds are adapted to growing only during the short season when there's rain, and then once it gets dry, they just die and wait to sprout again when it rains again. And that adaptation has allowed them to invade these areas and outcompete a lot of native bushes. So all of these invasive reeds were around, but they were not in as dense of clusters as you see here. And you can see that they also go all the way up the hill up there, even in places where a lot of the native brush is coming back. So in this case, the fire has made these more present in this ecosystem, and if burns keep continuing throughout the next few decades in this area, and the current trend continues, these reeds will outcompete most native shrubs, and eventually the native shrubs may actually disappear, which is not a good thing. So now I'm at the northern end of the Santa Monica Mountains near Calabasas, and this is what a lot of chaparral looks like around here. It's a pretty old growth chaparral, a little bit different from Topanga State Park. But then you go over here to the left, and you can see the leftovers of the old fire, which happened in 2016 here in Calabasas. So it has had a few years to regrow, 5 years to be exact, but you can see that it's noticeably different from over here. It once looked like what you see over here, but you can see it's a lot drier, a lot grassier, and a lot weedier. So it is at 5 years, and it already has slowed down its recovery rate. So there is growth each year when we get rain, but it's not that much. What you can basically see here is just like with Zuma Canyon, the weeds have taken over much of the space that was occupied by shrubs. And we're going to actually go over there and give a closer look at some of the shrubs near the edge of the trail over that way. So here we are up close. There's the chaparral that didn't burn, and then here's the burnt area over here. So of course you notice the difference in color, and that's because there aren't that many shrubs here. This area over here has a lot of invasive weeds and grasses, and that's why it's all brown. We're also here in the summertime. That being said, there definitely has been regrowth. You can see right here in front of us, these bushes have regrown since the fire. All the dead branches are the bare ones there, but that right there is regrown from the fire, and you can see down the hill there is more regrowth with shrubs, and also over there as well. But what you'll notice is in between all of that stuff, you get all of this invasive weed and grass stuff, and some of that is right here in front of me too. This is just the dead stuff. It is green in the rainy season, but it's designed to just endure hard times and then soak up moisture when it's around and then just sprout. So what we can see here in this remnants of this fire is that a lot fewer of the bushes re-sprouted. That could be from competition with all these reeds, or it could be from how hot the fire was and how slow it moved. Not entirely sure about that. But there are not as many bushes sprouting up on the hills over here as there used to be. And also you can see a lot more of these invasive grasses and weeds have gotten a hold. They get into the areas and they grow much faster than the native plants, and that's how they're able to gain a foothold here after the fire. So fire is an important part of the ecosystems out here in California. Without fire, these ecosystems would not function properly. However, the fires that are occurring right now, and their intensity and frequency, are just not doing ecosystems well. And gradually, as these areas burn more and more, these areas are changing. The plant communities are changing in composition. Some plants are becoming more common, usually non-native invasive weeds, and some species are becoming less common, usually native shrubs. So this is definitely a big issue that needs to be addressed. And if you would like to donate money to the Forest Service and the National Park Services, which are crucial agencies in making sure that the land is tended to well, I have the links in the description of this video, and definitely consider a donation because they need more money, not less money, if we're going to solve this issue. So that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this was informative for you and taught you something about how plant communities out here are affected by fires. So if you like this video, please give it a like, and if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel. So with that said, I will see you in the next video.